Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Coffin Conversations. I'm your host, Lauren, and today we have a really cool guest, like the most fitting guest I've probably had on the podcast to date. She is a UPenn-trained positive psychologist, executive coach, and the author of the new book, You Only Die Once: How to Make It to the End with No Regrets. Jodi Wellman is her name. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm just ridiculously giddy to be here with you.
I've been watching your public speaking. You're so good at public speaking and what you do and going on stage and motivating people to live their life with no regrets. Woohoo! Woohoo! And I found myself relating to a lot of the things that you said and how you came about to do what you do. But before I go into that, I would love if you would just tell us a little bit about you, your family, your life, and how you got into this.
Oh, well, hey, I'm happy to. Thanks for asking about the days once upon a time. Well, born and raised in the Toronto area. And then when I was around 30, I got an opportunity to move to Chicago for a corporate gig that at the time I was so excited about. And my husband and I said, well, we're only going to be here for like 18 months because we're going to have an adventure and then we're going to go back home. But we really liked Chicago, so we stayed. So I did the corporate thing for 17 years in total. And then I got itchy and yet also scared, which could filter into a lot of our conversation together. You know how sometimes it's fear that holds us back from living, the life we've imagined. Ugh. So I had to figure out what to do to get out of my corporate embrace that was embracing me so tightly. It was like the comfort zone that was snuffing the life out of me. And then I went into, for around 10 years, leadership development and coaching. And I always had this topic that was simmering in the background, this whole thing about how we're all totally going to die. And it was one of those things where I would keep all the quotes, like about stoicism or different philosophers or different motivators about live life, carpe diem, seize the day, all the things, right? And I didn't know what to do with it. So here I am. I'm working with corporations and I kept telling myself a story that, well, no one's going to want to talk about this thing. I'm going to get kicked out of the room. And so I did kind of what I do best is like, well, I said, well, what if I go to school and I study positive psychology for a master's degree? So I did it. And that gave me the confidence that I needed and a little bit of the credibility and like the scientific background to go, holy cow, like this stuff's legit. And so that then really was my motivator to say, I am moving on now from just doing the corporate stuff to starting 4,000 Mondays so I can get on stages and write books and do things to help us. Like basically, I just want to like reach through this podcast screen and like shake everybody, gently, but maybe if you need it less gently, I'll like give you a kick in the butt to be like, let's get on with living because we take it for granted because I know I sure do. So that was a bit of it. And then you asked about family. I'll make this super brief, but it's really important to my story, which is that my mom died when she was 58 of a heart attack. So young, right? Like lots of life. I think she was shorted 1,300 Mondays. I just calculated it last week. And so, sucks for her to have died and for me to have lost her. But the biggest whammy was while I was cleaning up her apartment after she died. It became so clear to me going through her drawers of her desk that, oh my goodness, here was this woman who had all these dreams and hopes and plans, business ideas, all the things. And I knew about them over the years and always like, oh, go for it, Mom. But she didn't have the courage to submit the manuscripts or the drawings or to start the business. She also didn't have the money, but that's a separate issue. She just, didn't execute. And then it just shook me to the core and made me think like, man, life's short. First of all, we never know when we're going to go. You could be 58 or 18 or 98. But it also I thought, I do not want to get to the end and have a boatload of regrets of those coulda, shoulda, wouldas. So that was really one of the big impetuses that kind of got me going to be like, oh, no. If I want to do this thing, I can't not do it. Almost in honor of my mom. So there you have it. There's the background. Whew.
Oh my goodness. Your mom just in a heart attack too. That's so sudden. It's not like she got cancer and then you were kind of given a warning and some anticipatory like, hey, this could be happening in the future. With a heart attack, they wake up one morning and then the next morning they don't. And it's so sudden. And there's this trend on TikTok where people are posting videos of cleaning out their loved ones' homes. And the caption will say, it's so weird. all of her things are still here, like as if she's coming back.
Yeah.
The robe is over the door, the toothbrush is in the bathroom, and we just have to go through and clean it out. And it messes with your mind. It's funny how in life, it's those big events that happen that lead us to where we're either meant to be or challenge us to get there.
Well, thank you for bringing that part up, because I'll share with you something that I find very bizarre about us being humans. And this comes back to my world of studying positive psychology, because I wish that it was just enough for us to be motivated to do things and then take action. And of course, sometimes we're self-starters, and sometimes there are people out there who they're just going to do what they're going to do. But here's the thing. Most of us need a bit of a negative nudge. Most of us have to have some kind of a life event that is like, whether it's hitting rock bottom, literally the bathroom floor, whether it is that, oh my goodness, you're devastated because you lost somebody who was close to you and that helped you to wake up. I just met with somebody who lost their brother when he was 41. And that was her absolute snap to attention moment of like, what am I doing? Some of us need a health diagnosis. And I am very fascinated. And it's a chapter in my book talking about wake up calls, how having that brush with death is for many of those people that I am so envious of, that they've had like the real visceral, not so much that they've seen the light at the end of the tunnel and came back. I mean, that would be very cool too. But more that they have the heightened perspective that I think I try to encourage people to have, which is like that awareness that life's short. I sometimes brace for impact when I talk to people, because one of my most exciting things to do is to get us to count how many Mondays we have left in life.
I was going to ask you about the Mondays. For somebody that might not know, is it 4,000 Mondays?
4,000 is roughly the average that we get. And so like I have 1,814. I'm on the downward slope for sure. And it sounds definitely weird, right? Like I recognize this sounds bizarro. And yet back to the whole science of it. When we do this math and we make it very, very, very granular, not just talking about years. We're already used to talking about years. It's unfortunately not kicking us out of our autopilot. When we do the math of the weeks, for many of us, it helps us to go, oh, wow, it sounds like a lot, but it's not. And then that creates this thing called temporal scarcity, which is that when we see something as limited time only or really rare or temporary, it helps us to see it as more valuable, which is exactly what we want to do with our lives, is to go, whoa, I've been taking it for granted, honey bunny. And now I see you've got this limited ticking time bomb of a life going backwards. And I want to treat you now with way more of the respect you deserve. And I don't want to get to the end and feel like I left life on the table.
How many Mondays is 4,000? Is that like 75? Is that the average?
It gets to about 80 years. So women, we get 83 on average, and men get 78 on average.
I can attest to that. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a mortician.
Yes, I do. I love, well, yeah, I'm a fan.
That's my job. And that really put my life into perspective for me, was burying people or embalming people. I specifically remember this young woman who died of breast cancer. She didn't have health insurance. She waited to get coverage, and in her wait, it was too late. And I will never forget her mom up at the casket saying, my daughter had all these plans. She wanted to have kids. She had just gotten married. She was a beautiful young woman, and life was taken from her. And just, I mean, and I know that there's going to be other funeral directors that relate to this time and time and time again. You are there to witness how suddenly death can come almost every day. That can really put your life into perspective on how you want to live it. It can go one way or it can go the other way, where there's people that are in this job and in this industry where they get so detached.
Yeah.
They get so rock hard emotion wise. A lot of that generation is now kind of moving out, and we have the younger generation moving into the funeral service industry. It's really interesting to see the shift in the dynamic now. And the turnover rate is really high for this job.
I was just going to ask you, what is the difference generationally in terms of attitudes towards death in the job?
Well, for starters, it's about 60% women, I'd say now, going into the workplace. When I graduated, and this was, I always like, how many years ago was it?
How many Mondays? I'll tell you.
Yeah, how many Mondays? I don't know. Some random amount of Mondays ago when I graduated, there was like 20 of us, and there was only 3 or 4 men.
Wow.
So it was all women, which I think is great and fantastic, by the way, because we are naturally compassionate and caring. And we're in nursing and there's women doctors. And now we're getting into the death care industry. And I love that. And I think it's changing it for the better.
Great.
But there is just the older generation. They're the ones that are portrayed in the movies where they're older and they've done things a certain way for so long. And with the new coming into the industry, it can be hard because it is shifting. But I think it's going to be a good shift for the future for funeral service.
Yeah, I love hearing that. And back to the original point you made around witnessing and seeing that one story in particular, the impact of someone saying, and I got shivers when you said it, when you recounted it, that like, my daughter, she had plans. You're grabbing me by this idea that many of us have hopes and dreams and some kind of desire. And many of us will do a natural thing because it's not the right phase of life. Be like, well, you know what, we're going to move to the coast later, like when the kids are out of school. And like, that might make sense. I'm sure. But many of us do this thing where we defer our lives unnecessarily, right? It's like we postpone our existence and we do this thing where we say, I'm going to do that after something. It's like this arrival fallacy. Like when I make a certain amount of money, then I'm going to do these cool things. Or when I lose the weight, then I'm going to start dating. Or, you know, when I go and get that certification, then I'm going to apply for the bigger jobs, when sometimes that's necessary, but often it isn't. It's just our confidence that is holding us back. And so I have a great amount of like angst for all of us about this idea that we do put our dreams on ice. And it's not just because we could go to the morbid and say, you could end up in your casket next week and all your family would be saying, oh, but she had plans. I mean, yes, that would be sad. But I look at it like every time we have a dream and we say, oh, I'm going to wait until work dies down. You know, well, that's never going to happen. Or I'm going to wait until I retire. That's a big one, right?
Never, don't do that. Please don't do that.
Tell us.
Please don't do that. The amount of people that I have buried, it's always a man for some reason, or two randomly. And the wife will come in and she'll say, he just retired last week. He just retired last month. He just retired 6 months ago. I'm getting chills telling you because the amount of people that come in and they're planning a funeral for their spouse.
Yeah.
We were going to vacation and we were going to work. And then we were going to live our lives once we retired. They were always waiting for the next thing. Yes. And they ran out of time. Yep. It was taken from them because I think we just don't want to acknowledge the fact we're all going to die. So we put off these things and think we have time to do them later. And then life catches up with us and the Grim Reaper doesn't wait.
He's just a bugger. It's a sick joke to come and swoop in right after retirement and be like, oh yeah? Yeah, you had these big plans? Not on my watch. And he comes in. And so, so I love that you've just said that. I'm going to quote you on that in so many opportunities moving forward. And I look at this now like it's a good symbol for what happens if we wait. Not just that we could die, because that, of course, is the worst case scenario, but it's inevitable. I also look at it like, okay, you could get to your retirement and you might lose your mobility or your energy or your marbles or all the things. And even that would suck. But you know what I think is even sadder? I look at it like, what about the lives we're living right now? Like the prime of our lives. Like technically, each and every one of us listening right now is in the prime of your life because you will never be younger than you are today. Now, technically, you could get healthier and fitter and all the things. We know this. But like, we're kind of dealing with like the best of us. And when we do the thing where we say, oh, I'm going to learn how to play the violin later, or I'm going to defer that trip. Oh, we're going to go to the south of France. We're going to do that someday. Okay, someday is like very, very evasive. I get concerned, not that you won't get to do it later. I get concerned about what about your life today? Who's taking a stand for your life now? And maybe even within the next year or two, because that's like a really malleable window we have of like within eyesight, you know, of like, what about living and showing up now? And I say this, by the way, I want to be super clear. Like, I don't mean to say it like I'm preaching, like I've got it all figured out and the rest of you need to learn how to live. Because like, oh, I am teaching myself daily. I'm having to convince myself because I'm an introverted homebody that I need to encourage myself to live. And so this is my own prompt to be like, oh, every time we have the instinct to delay it, let's just do just a little something, you know? Did you just give me like an introverted high five?
Yeah, because that's why you count down your Mondays.
Yeah.
Is you're like, you need that little reminder, because the years, for some reason, when we talk about years, it doesn't hit the same. But when you talk about how many Mondays you have left, it's like you're counting down to your average when death might come if we're lucky enough to make it that far.
Right. And so your attitude is so amazing because you get to see by virtue of your chosen profession that it doesn't always get that far. Right? Like, so you deal with people who are above average and certainly below average. Does that create an awareness for you? Obviously, seeing younger people show up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It put my own life right into perspective. It made me a more protective mother. I search all the things. I want to do everything how I should. I'm protective, but I want to live a happy life. Even as simply like, have you seen those videos where you should wear the bikini? Life is short. Wear the damn bikini because it really is short. Things even as simple as that, especially as a mom, after you have kids, you're like, oh my goodness, should I? Yes, you should.
Yeah.
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about talking about kids and parents. Like, are you a living or dead role model to your kids? Are you able to talk a little bit about the ways to teach a living like you mean it mindset with your kids?
Yeah. So not being a parenting expert, I have a pet cat who is our child. We're deeply devoted to Andy. But I do a lot of work with groups who are parents. And there's an interesting phenomenon, right? That, you can nod with me or edit accordingly, please. But for many parents, you become monofocused, and it's lovely because as caregivers, you're swept up in the caring about another human being, lovely, and also probably your job and other responsibilities. And who gets the shaft, right? It's often that as a parent, you're the last to say, when was the last time I had some alone time, let alone like time with, maybe time away with your partner or something that is growing your own development, something that matters to you and for you. So here's where I have a bit of a perspective. So regrets and parenting, I recognize it's a very ripe topic. But I look at it like, I've already told you briefly the story of my mom. She died with a bunch of regrets. And that for me was actually a demonstration. So I grew up observing a very creative, amazing woman who didn't have the courage to press the go button. And that has impacted my life about recognizing we are not the kind of people that take risks. Risks are scary. We play it safe. That's not the life, by the way, I want to live, so I have to consciously override that. So I think for many of us, we have to be very conscious that we as adults, we're setting an example for younger people in our lives about what's possible. And so recognizing the vast responsibility there and also the opportunity to loosen up some of that story and narrative that if I go and spend Saturday morning by myself at Starbucks, reading and writing and journaling and spending time alone and restoring my own self. Or if I go away on a weekend with the girls and I'm leaving the kids at home, ideally someone else is watching the kids. I would navigate. That's like,
don't leave them at home alone.
Be like slightly less cool to do that. But assuming you've got childcare looked after, that is actually maybe a great parenting gesture, right? So sometimes we have to flip the script and maybe reframe it. It's not about, ooh, I'm indulging and I deserve it. I think you do. But also, I'm showing my kiddos that I'm the kind of person who values friendship and time away. I'm a kind of parent that teaches that you go out on a Wednesday night and learn something new, like going to learn how to sketch or going and exercising your body and learning how to play pickleball or doing the things, right? So I think, is it easy? No, of course not. And yet, is it almost like, dare I say, just a really generous and opportune requirement as a parent to be able to demonstrate, teach kids how to live. Like I think about it, we're not taught how to live. We watch and we observe. And if we're not showing how to value variety and spontaneity and taking some risks and playing big and doing all the things that we like to think we do, then how else will kids learn that? So I'm curious your opinion as a mom about that.
It is so easy as a mom, as a family, as a unit to get stuck in the daily, weekly grind. Wake up, breakfast, school, come home, dinner, bed.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get hooked up in that. And the experiences that I've lived have helped me think, okay, what can I do today that is going to make the day more fun? Not just for me. I find myself doing more spontaneous things, kind of like you said, like going to the park. And I know that sounds silly, like that's a really simple thing.
No.
But when you get stuck in that daily grind, something just as simple as going to the park, going to the beach, like that is so special for them. So being that outgoing parent, I think is really important. That's been a lot easier for me after I lost weight. And that's really easy to put on too when you're going through the daily grind, is the weight can just come really fast. I figured that out after 30. But your book and your messages are just so important, even whether you have kids or you don't, because it can really put a new spin on your life as a parent, and trying to create an environment that shows, kind of like what you mentioned, how to teach kids how to live, how to go do fun things, be spontaneous. And another really important thing for me is my marriage. I hope that one day they find a relationship like I have with my husband, that they find love, that they see that love, that they don't always see me just on my phone or on my technology. That's going to be a real problem in the future, I think.
I think you're super right. I think it's currently a problem, and I like that you're already aware of it. And thank you for bringing up the relationship dynamic, because that's a whole other category of life where many of us have just gotten a little bit of sleep at the switch. So much of what we're talking about is this idea about falling into the dead zone of various domains of life. It could be the parenting thing where it's like, same old, because routines keep the wheels on the bus, on the truck. I totally get that. But, are we going through the same motions of date night and the relationship nature versus harking back to the earlier times where it was just something completely fresh and new? In my household, it would be a very unique day if we were up past 8:49 p.m. And I think about a time in Chicago, there was this really great restaurant there, Au Cheval, and they have this thing where they come up with chilaquiles at midnight, and you can't get them until midnight. And I remember my husband and I were already edging towards like, wait, what? Midnight? Like, are human beings out at midnight still? And over 30 or 40 years old? And so one night we went out for the chilaquiles at midnight, and we felt like rock stars, So
I bet
now
you did. You were so excited, like just something different. You got to go and live a little.
Well, those are the moments where you're like, okay, we're shaking it up a little. And so you mentioned the words habits, because that's super prone to the parenting routine. Many of us just do this just in general with lives, with or without kids. And it could be in our relationship. It could be in our day-to-day routine with work. It could be just the way we try to create a semblance of control. And I love control so darn much. I know it's a myth and it's like a little mirage in my mind, but I create a false illusion of control by coming up with these routines and habits. But here's where it's a whole other chapter in the book about how they dull the edges of our existence. And while they can be helpful, sometimes we just kind of overplay the track, right? Where like all of a sudden it's like, it's the same route to work or to the childcare or to the thing, or it's the same workout that we're doing en route. And it then becomes numbing. And that's how we just become these like highly functioning zombies, just going through the motions of our lives. And I'm not that evil. Like, I'm not suggesting we blow up all of our habits, because then life would not be organized and we wouldn't, get to work on time. But what would it look like to shake up your routine just a teeny bit? I have the same breakfast almost every morning, but what would it take? Like, tomorrow I'm going to do like peanut butter and a banana on toast. By the way, I make up these are the silly little things, like even something like go for a walk, take a different route home, or drive home and past a new neighborhood and just notice and say, I didn't know that there's a falafel shop there now. And then maybe that means that, Friday you go and get the falafel for dinner rather than your usual routine. Or maybe you, rather than do the usual ho-hum, like throw the laundry in the morning on Saturday and do the thing, you say, we're getting up and we're going for a picnic breakfast in the park. And that's crazy. Who does a picnic breakfast? I don't know. We all should. Let's dare us. Like, let's all do a picnic. I don't know. How come picnics are only for lunch? That's so weird. Anyways, like shaking it up in the smallest way, right? Just the tiniest thing. That these are the things we underestimate the impact about how it can just give us this slightly different approach. Spending time outside is for a lot of people important. I'm an indoor.
The dopamine,
Yes.
just switching up those little things can alter your brain and like make you do another little thing. Little by little, it all stacks up and all adds up.
Thank you. That's the perfect summary of it. Because you do one little thing, it could be in the week that starts to show yourself that some things are interesting, or I'm going to try that new restaurant. And then you demonstrate that I'm the kind of person where life gets lived around here. And then that gives you even the tiniest little bit to say, oh, and then while we were out, I noticed that there was like a flower shop they were having a flower arranging class. And I think I might want to do that. It's just crazy enough to work.
I wanted to come back to relationships really quick because there's one bullet point on this list of things I wanted to talk to you about. And it says 4 ways to break out of the inevitable relationship rut and spice things up in our platonic and romantic relationships. And I think that's so important to talk about because I don't feel like people talk about that enough, that being married is great. You have your partner, but it's so easy to get stuck in that grind, and it can even bleed over into your relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Well, one of the easiest ways to start off with anything, whether it's with a relationship, but let's just use that as the example, is to do like a diagnosing the dead zones. Sounds kind of morbid, but I think there's an opportunity to do a little bit, because we never really, if you think about it, with important people in our lives, we don't talk about the relationship. We're just in the relationship.
No, we really don't, do we? We don't sit down and do like a little check-in or something and say, hey, are you happy?
Yeah, right. So maybe we don't want to hear the answer. Right. It's like we're a performance review out of the office. The horror. One of the things I recommend, so I have a Astonishingly Alive assessment, and it's in the book, and it's also available on my website for free. And it's ways to look at all the aspects of your life, all the domains. So it could be like your fun and your recreation, it could be social life, it could be your health, it could be money. And that's something that you could do with your partner and just be like, hey, let's just take a look at, like, I'll do it for me, you do it for you, but we could also talk about it together. So assessing together, like, where in our lives are we feeling like things are really working well, and where have they flatlined? And so sometimes doing it that way is a really low commitment way. We're not talking yet about the status of our relationship and how we would grade it. But inevitably, when you get to the relationship section, because there's one about romance, it could have to do with this, like the quality of your relationship, intimacy, and it just gets the wheels going to talk. Be like, hey, what's working for us? Like, when are we at our best? And what will be one opportunity to make our relationship even better? And so for most people, it does have to do with novelty. And I don't mean new partners necessarily. I mean having to do with the routine, right? It's like, hey, let's hark back. So one of the keys is to hark back and say, what's something that we used to do that was so great for us, but we just fell off the wagon? Because we all have those examples in our lives. It could be your hobby, right? It could be a hobby that you just let go, or like, oh my God, I forgot. I always used to walk after dinner, and then I'd come back, but I don't know. I stopped doing that. I don't know. We do this. That's fine. But do that with your partner. What did we used to do? We're like, oh my gosh, we used to do that thing where we would like make a new recipe every month, or like we would do a mystery cook that you would make something for me and I wouldn't know what it was, or we would go, or remember we used, whatever that is. So you might want to find one thing that you want to rekindle that used to be kind of cool. So then you've got the memory of doing it, and also it's the freshness of trying it again. So that's one opportunity. So diagnosing the dead zones, rekindling and rehashing cool stuff that used to jazz us up in whatever way, shape, or form. And then it's brainstorming, like, what would be cool to do together? What do we like to do? What if we lost the plot on? What would be fun to try? And it could be like, let's go and check out some live music in town. Or wouldn't it be neat to take a course together, learning a new language? And then the good news is we could go and travel and use that new language whenever it happens. So learning something together, finding something that you can do that doesn't always have to be expensive and time consuming. Sometimes it is just as simple as, hey, it sounds like we both really want to feel active and fit together. Wouldn't it be great? Like, do you want to do a thing where we go for a walk every morning before the day starts? And that way we can just spend quality time chatting and also moving our bodies together. So identifying things that you want to spice up. Putting the technology away and just focusing on each other and doing activities that bring you closer together that you used to do. And there's research actually about technology. So a lot of us will think that we are doing a great job if we're at the dinner table and our phone is turned down. You're like, no, I'm not on it. So therefore I'm amazing. However, the research is pretty clear that it's a very different experience being at the table. Even with a phone on the table, people do not feel as close and connected. than if the phone is not on the table at all. And so I just encourage you to experiment with that, even if it means like, fine, put it in your back pocket if you have to, just out of sight, out of mind. So that could be just another degree of showing your partner, like, I am here for you. I'm showing up for you. I want to participate fully in our relationship. And so for many of us, that does mean the device that can be literally divisive. It's making the time to say, what would make my partner feel like they were special? They are special. And now I'm going to get morbid. Prepare for the morbid example. You don't need.
You're in the perfect spot for that.
I was going to say, you're cool with it. I think everybody listening to you is already like, yeah, we're primed. But I mean, this is the thing where you go, let's play the morbid game of, what if you died tonight? The things that I would regret or miss. And most of it is the silly, sweet, simple stuff. Like, I just wish I'd spent more quality time. It isn't just that I wish that we went and did the Mediterranean cruise. I mean, that could have been cool too. It's about the things where it's like, I just wish that we'd curled up on the couch more, like we used to, or, wow, if that happened, I wish, of course, that I wouldn't have nagged at you about those things. And so maybe that's the lesson learned, is like, life's short, lay off. Like, who cares? Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yep.
Or it could be, wow, I wish we always talked about, back to the idea about how you said, the mother said about her daughter in the casket, like she had such plans. What about as you and your partner, your bucket list, that probably most of us, our bucket list is like a joint affair these days when you have a partner. Sometimes you got your own bucket list. That's great too. But look at it and go, let's plan into the future and make stuff happen. So we've always said we wanted to go to Alaska. When should we do it? Is that the priority? And like, decide together which 2 or 3 bubble up to the top. Maybe some of them fall off because bucket lists should be evolving organisms. But which should we do? Wow, we're going to do the Alaska. Let's do the Alaska thing. When would that be? Would it be summer of 27? Okay, so let's start planning for it. And then you've got something to anticipate with your spouse too. But then just think, if they died tonight, well, at least you wouldn't regret that you had the plan in motion, but you would regret that you always talked about it and didn't do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, if I died tonight, maybe that would encourage somebody to sit down and, like you said, snuggle on the couch and watch a movie, or go out and watch the sunset go for a walk at the beach or at the park, or, just something together. You say it was morbid, but I think it's perfect. I think that's the perfect analogy to use.
Yeah. Because again, we need the threat. We need the nudge. We need that poke in the ribs to really feel like, oh, right, I've got something to lose. Again, that's why we're not that concerned about getting on with our goals in life and our little dreams and ideas until we go, oh, right, that's right, I'm not going to live forever. There's a quote that I like in Anatole France. The average man does not know what to do with his life, yet wants another one which will last forever. We always love the idea, we go eternity, but like, really? Because are we really even showing up for this one? Because chances are we're just punting it, as discussed. And or we're not maybe being on our very best behavior. And by the way, I feel like as I'm saying this, I do need to put an asterisk on this and say, within reason, I recognize we're tired. Yeah. This can't be balls to the wall living every day, because I can't keep up with that either.
No, and we got to work, and yeah.
Right. And I have a lot of shows to watch on Netflix and Hulu. They have to get watched.
I can't die. I didn't finish Bridgerton. Not today, Lord, please.
2 more episodes, then I can go.
What happened to Charlotte?
Oh, you're great.
What the heck is a warm and fuzzy folder?
Oh, you know how life can just sometimes beat you down, and you're having those days and you're like, oh, you're down and out, or you had a thing that you had planned and it fell through, this cool business idea or the thing, and you just need a boost. Wouldn't it be nice if we already had at the ready this little opportunity, whether usually everything's digital now, but if you could just go in your inbox that is probably swamped and causing more freaking distress to you, and just go to a convenient little folder that you already have set up called Warm and Fuzzy. Or I know a gal I met, she already has one. She calls it the smile file. You name it what you want.
That's
right?
Cute.
That's so cute. I wish I came up with that first. But it's hers. And you go in there's maybe there's some emails that you have saved because it's a nice thing someone said about your friendship, or maybe it's something a client said that were really nice, testimonial, or it was any words of encouragement that when you read it, that made your heart warm, and that you thought, oh, I can't delete this. This is something I need to keep in my warm and fuzzy folder so that on a down, dreary-ish day, I'm gonna read it. Or even on a day where I'm already feeling pretty good, but I just want an extra boost. Maybe that extra jolt in order to take action on something that I've been postponing because I'm a little bit scared about it. Read the warm and fuzzy folder. Or for some of us, I've been trying to do a better job myself because I'm not capturing, like if I get a nice comment from somebody on Instagram in a DM, maybe somebody's read the book and it really makes me feel like $1 billion. And I'm like, it takes my breath away in the best way, not in a deathly way. And I'm like, I want to capture that somebody is counting their Mondays and here's what they did. And then they registered for that massage therapy program and they're so excited. And I want to snapshot that. And so what I'm trying to do now is I'm taking screenshots and then I'm emailing them to myself, and then I'm putting it in the warm and fuzzy folder. And there's probably a way more efficient way to do it, but one step short of scrapbooking. It's just a way to rig your life so that you can have little moments of happiness. Yeah. Would you ever do that kind of thing?
Funeral directors do that, but you want to know what we do it with?
What?
Thank you cards from families.
Oh, I thought you were going to say bones. Okay,
no.
Tell me more. tell me more about the thank yous. Yeah.
So we can have really, really rough days where it just really beats you down. You kind of have to remember your why you got into this line of work and why you keep going and why we do what we do. And I keep all of my thank you cards in a binder, or we have a board where we put them up at. And so when we have a rough day, I'll go over and I'll read them from families that we helped and how we made a difference for them. And it can just change your whole day. So I totally get what it means to have a warm and fuzzy folder. And I know there's going to be a funeral director on here that's like, I do that too.
Oh, I love that. These are important. Lauren, the thing you just said about changing your day. So not even from a needing to go from a negative to even just a neutral or a positive, picking us up at the down times. I also look at our lives like for most of us, most days are okay, right? We're functioning at above a zero line. We're not in the minus. But I look at our chances, these little pockets of time where we have the choice of how we spend it. And back to the idea about never underestimating the impact of designing even that 5 or 10 minutes. Like if you have a quick break, between when you're going to see the next family that comes in for an appointment, or there's something that you've got on the go and it's like, I've got this little window of time. Our instinct is usually, at least it is for me, is to get caught up on emails, to do something that feels productive. And that's the disease that I will one day cure for myself. Probably not. But what I can do when I'm giving myself a fighting chance to like my life a little more is to go, okay, if I got this 10-minute opportunity, what would actually be alivenating right now? Like what would make me feel really good, right?
Alivenating. It's like rejuvenating, but alivenating.
Exactly. So that could be something as simple as I want to go outside. I just want to sit down with a bubbly, fizzy water and I want to look at the birds and then I come back in and I'm restored. Or some people will say, I'm just going to do the world's quickest, just walk around the block, come back, my heart rate's up and I feel good and I feel like I did something for myself. Some of us, it might be like, just meditate and breathe 20 slow breaths that inhale the good, exhale all the garbage. It could be playing with your pet. I mean, I think pets are the answers to everything.
Yes,
go and see what's going on, right? Like they're always loving you. For some of us, it could be reading a book chapter. And that just makes you feel like I gave myself just a sliver of time, especially as a parent when like reading is not like, you're like, I'm reading to kids at night, not to myself. Okay. But what if in that 10 minutes, it was that you got to carve it out, or maybe it means going online and not getting sucked into the news feed, but doing a thing where you're like, I'm going to look for a recipe that I just get so excited about and I'm going to plan it and I'm going to make it this weekend. And that feels exciting to you because you've got like a cool dinner that you're going to plan for your family. Or remember back to that date night where you're like, I've got a dessert for you and I'm going to feed it into your mouth with my hands. I don't know. Something that just makes you feel like it's your choice, how little bright spots of how you want to spend even those 10-minute increments.
So there's 2 more bullet points here. One of them says how to maximize your vacation days to effectively nurture your well-being. And the other one is why the 4-day work week won't make a difference in preventing burnout.
Maybe we'll work backwards. The 4-day work week, I think it's really intriguing. It did for a lot of people, this idea, like if I could just get more time on my weekend. And right now my antennae are way up. You cannot see them, but they're going up. I'll raise my eyebrow. It's that there's a cautionary tale here. Like what we're trying to do is live for the weekend, which means that our work week, whether it's 4 or 5 days, is the time that we view as, it's very spooky over there. You've got a haunted house happening.
The ghost turned the light off. That was really weird. It's touch, so it shouldn't have done that.
We're in the presence of someone.
That was really weird.
I love it.
If you're listening and not watching, my light just turned off. That was illuminating my face, and I'm touching it again to turn it back on. Mm-hmm. But I also think I have a ghost in my house, but sorry about that.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you've got a skeleton behind you. You're asking for it. Yeah, it's so perfectly welcomed. Love this so much. So, the idea of, okay, fine, like a 4-day work week for many of us just means we're going to get duped and we're going to do 5 days of work in 4, and we're still going to feel stressed. And because we don't have good boundaries on that 5th day, we're still going to sneak in a bunch of emails and calls. So I'm not sure who's winning. But back to the bigger problem that I believe exists, which is that, are we living for the weekend, or are we just waiting to live on vacation, which means that Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday is where life goes to die, and there's no fun to be had. That to me is the bigger problem, where we are not carving out time in our weekdays, for example, whatever your non-work days, for living. And so then what happens is we're just kind of like walking around like, corpses in the making in the job, or we're really hoping for work to deliver as like a be all end all. And like, somehow this needs to be a source of entertainment and joy and meaning for me, because I've got nothing else going on during the week. And then I get to the weekend, and that's when I live my real life. So I just hope for all of us, myself included, what could I do that helps me enjoy my life during the week too? So that I'm not always just clamoring for a weekend or for a vacation, because thank goodness now I can live. That goes back to the idea about, well, when I retire, that's when I'm going to do all the things that I've dreamt about because I put it all off. And then your first question about retirement, the vacation. I am so appalled at all of us collectively that we leave so many vacation days on the table every year. The research stats are just phenomenal that a majority of people don't take all the time that is quote unquote owed to them from their employer that they've earned, And as an entrepreneur, I don't know when the last time I put an out of office response up was. And that's sad. I need to fix that. I'm saying this out loud for accountability, because time often breaks, even in a world where you're constructing a full life during the week and outside the week, so that weekends are amazing also, just as much as your Tuesday nights and Wednesday mornings and all the cool things you're doing. But vacations are just these really special times when I think we can really carve out intentional connection time and bucket list time that we just don't have literally the time to do during the work week. And so I would just say, let's make it a commitment that at the start of every fiscal year, your calendar year at work, you map out your time so that each and every day is already planned. And of course you can flex, like obviously if you need to change it because of whatever, weather, when things happen, great. But most people just let another year go by and then they roll over 4 more days or 9 more days or however many more days, because they just kind of didn't get on top of it. And we just kept thinking, oh, I'm going to get to it. But that's another metaphor for life. Oh yeah, you're going to get to it? Yeah, you might die. And so let's all die with no vacation days left, and let's die with something cool in the calendar that we've already got booked, because we already have the vacation booked, That would be good to do. I think it would be a really good goal. A, to die broke. B, to die with all sorts of vacations already booked and planned. Don't you think that's a mark of success?
Yeah. And I was going to bring up the make sure you die broke, because even if we make it, if you make it to the ripe age of 90, what's going to happen, which happens with pretty much anybody who reaches that age, is we get dependent on, we need other people to help us. So most of us, if we're lucky enough to live that long, we're going to end up in a nursing home. Nursing homes are expensive. Guess who's going to take all your money? The nursing home. If the nursing home doesn't take it, then the state's going to take it, because you're going to run out of money. So you might as well spend it on you. Take your vacations, do what you want to do, because, or start giving it to your kids now, because they have a look back period too. It's normally 5 or 7 years. And then you can't gift your money away, because they're like, no, where's my cut from the state?
Right.
Death and taxes.
Yep. We're certain of those. So I love hearing your counsel, because you see this happen to families. Obviously, you see the repercussions, you see the impact.
Oh, yeah. Life is crazy. It's really taught me so much about how important it is to live and do things that make you happy, because the goal of life is the pursuit of happiness. And I think when we get stuck in our daily lives, we forget about that. We lose sight of that. We just get stuck. You really are a blessing because you make people wake up and realize even something so simple as going for a picnic. That is so important. That makes you happy. That going in the sunshine, putting your feet in the sand, in the grass, connecting with the earth, doing yoga, just anything. These little things all add up to be big things to make you happier. And we're in such a society right now where everything is at the touch of our fingers, and we're looking for that next dopamine hit when we scroll, and we're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. When the dopamine it's not going to come from there. And just little daily things in our life can add up to make a really big impact. And that was like one of the really big takeaways from your speech that I got, that I watched on YouTube. I'm really excited to read your book because I don't think I'm going to be able to put it down. One of the questions I really wanted to ask you, I get asked all the time. Yeah. And I wrote it down so I didn't forget to ask you. I get asked how I'm not afraid to die. I have people in my inbox, they're like, I am scared of death. I am petrified of death. And I was wondering if you have any advice for people that are terrified of dying.
It's going to sound simplified, and I don't mean for it to sound dismissive. So I just want to begin by saying this.
Sometimes simple is easy and they remember it better.
Fair. Okay. I go to the research about death anxiety, and one of the things that jumps out at me is this correlation between someone's belief near the end of their lives, especially, that they have lived their life, or whether they have the perception of an unlived life. And people who feel like they have left life out there, that there's life unlived, they have that back to these ideas about, wow, I always wanted to go and do the road trip across the country, or I always wanted to go back to school and become a veterinary assistant, or the idea that there were things you wanted to do and didn't. Those people that feel like they left life unlived tend to have more death anxiety versus those who just really participated in life, tried different things, showed up, were willing to fail, but did it. And then they get to the end and they're like, you know what? I'm okay. Like, it doesn't mean that they're fearless, but it means that sort of sense of surrender, like, I killed it. I'm good to go. And I think that is a really cool message because it's within our control to opt in and participate just even a little bit more. And again, it doesn't need to be full on. It could be just even like 7% more, enough to give yourself that gesture like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing good here. I'm trying some different things. And that tends to ameliorate some of that anxiety, which to me is just a win-win.
The secret to not fearing death is to make it all the way to the end and know that you lived.
You summarized that so perfectly. Why couldn't you be my editor?
I'm not always the best with words, but sometimes when they're simple like that and you just put it together, it's got the impact you needed.
Perfect.
Is there any other really big points with the book that you wanted to bring up?
You know what? Thanks for asking about it. I would frame it as an opportunity it's really interactive. And so there's the pre-mortem in the beginning and then all the info and questions and the post-mortem at the end. And if I was to actually count how many questions there are, it has to be no less than 2,000. I mean, it's very, very reflective getting you thinking about your life. I really think I'm not exaggerating. I could be. But it's designed to be all about, how's your life going now? How might you want it to be? What's the stuff that really lights you up? What makes you feel most alive? And then how might you want to maybe start taking even the smallest bit of action? And I'm very, very conscious about it not being like, poof, you have to blow everything up. You got to quit your job, get a divorce, move to California. No, like, could you say cut your hair?
Pull a Britney Spears, buzz it off.
I mean, maybe that's the thing you need to do. We don't know. But generally, most of us don't have to blow it up and detonate. Most of the time, it's about, my goal is to help guide you through, okay, you got a bit of a list. Awesome. Like, what would be one small thing you could implement starting today? And so it's really bite-sized. Because I know personally, but through research and working with clients over the years, it's only sustainable, if we can just start to do just one tiny little thing right now. Like maybe tonight, it's like, just use curry as your spice. Do it. And then...
Or wine.
You know what? I thought that was obvious.
You don't cook with wine?
Right. That to me was a given, but hey, wine and curry, great combo too.
Where can people buy your book? Where can they find you? Could you tell us your social media handles they could find you?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram at 4000 Mondays, and you have to spell out FOURTHOUS, 4000 Mondays. And then that's the same thing with my website, 4000mondays.com. And there's a page for my book there, which is called You Only Die Once. You can kind of get my book anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, wherever you like to get your books. You Only Die Once, How to Make It to the End with No Regrets. And I really do hope that we all skid in broadside without regrets at the end.
Me too, because that's the way life is meant to be lived.
Right with you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. This was so great. This was so interesting. I'm literally on the edge of my seat the whole time. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. I feel like we're friends now, so we're friends.
Yeah, it's automatic. I mean, especially since you said wine and death. I mean, we're already together. Yeah, this is great. Best friends.
Normally there's wine in here, but there's tea tonight because my throat hurts because we've been sick for 2 weeks. But oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you again next week on Coffin Conversations.
Woohoo!
Bye-bye. We did it.